January 1st of 2019, we collected our first rent check ever. And I remember like we collected it and it was like the weirdest feeling because it was the first time we had made money not from a job, you know? And we took that money, we put it in our bank account, and then it paid for over half of our mortgage.
Hey guys, if we're just meeting, my name is Vitaly Volpov. I'm an active real estate investor with just under 90 rental units in my real estate portfolio. I'm also a part owner of a real estate brokerage in upstate New York called Serenity Real Estate Team, and I'm a licensed New York State attorney. In this video, I sat down and interviewed my friends Josh and Allie, who are known as the Fi Couple on social media. We discussed everything from house hacking to paying off debt to investing to building your own personal brand. Josh and Allie have a really interesting story that I think a lot of new investors will find inspirational. So without further ado, let's take a look at what they had to say. All right, guys, today I have with me Allie and Josh, who are the Fi Couple, and I'm really happy and excited to welcome them to the show and talk to them about personal finance, real estate investing, house hacking, and maybe any other topics that they want to talk about. So Josh, Allie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to connect today.
Yeah, we've been following your content for many years. We've learned a ton, and it's been really helpful in terms of our journey towards real estate and financial freedom.
For sure. And I've been following you guys as well. And you've been instrumental in the local circles in real estate and also online. And obviously, you guys have built up a pretty substantial brand now. And it's awesome to see what you guys are doing, both with your own investments as well as your branding and your own businesses. So I'm excited to kind of get into it and talk to you guys about all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So why don't you guys start out by just telling the audience who probably might not know who you guys are as to like what your story is, where did you get started? We'll talk a little bit about real estate and then some of the other ventures that you guys are into as well.
Yeah, so we are a husband and wife duo from upstate New York, and about 5 years ago, Allie finished with her master's in social work, and we were now both working full time, and we were 1 year out from our wedding. And it was at that point in time, kind of planning for the wedding, that we decided to, for the first time, really start like understanding our financial situation. Like we never talked about finances, we didn't have a budget or anything like that. So we started tracking those numbers, and it was the first time really I think we realized just how much debt we had. It was over $100,000 of student loans, and then we had car loans and credit cards. And so that was kind of the turning point in our relationship of we need to kind of better understand personal finance.
And then in that same year, when we're just starting to have these money conversations, Josh got laid off from a long-term employer of 7 years and totaled his car in the same 2-week window. It wasn't a good start to January. But with that situation, we very quickly went from a 2-income household, pretty much living paycheck to paycheck, to a 1-income household. And we realized just how leveraged you are when you only have a single stream of income. So with all of the knowledge that we were kind of building, it really motivated us to make a huge change in our life to get out of our debt and to build financial stability.
So with the help of learning how to build a budget, learning how to invest in real estate and specifically house hacking, and then also with the help of learning how to build an online business that we could do from anywhere. 5 years later from when we first started this journey, we've now gotten to that place where most of our expenses are covered either by investments or our online business. And the work that we do, or part-time work, I should say, that we do for our jobs is now really entirely optional.
I love it. Yeah, that's amazing. So what was the living arrangement at the time when you got laid off, you crashed your car? Were you guys renting at the time? Did you own a property already?
Yes, we were renting a luxury apartment for about $1,400 a month, not counting any type of utility or anything like that. So that apartment for us, where we were financially, was probably more than we should have been spending on housing. So our goal for buying a rental property in 2018 was to reduce that monthly bill.
Because for us, it was both in human service professions, and we didn't really have overly scalable incomes. So that probably wasn't going to be the route by which we were able to pay off over $100,000 of student loans fast. it really became, well, how can we lower our expenses? And we started off like cutting out like coffee and Netflix and stuff like that. And like that just didn't last very long. But then when we really started looking at our budget, our car payment and our rent, those were literally the two largest expenses that we had. And we were like, well, if we can reduce those or like get them to zero, that's going to make for a huge monthly savings.
So how did you first learn about house hacking? Where did you hear about it first? And what was that journey like to figure it out and then start implementing it?
Yeah, so exactly how I found the article, I can't tell you. It was just like the internet gods. But there is an article by a real estate investor author named Brandon Turner. It's called How to Hack Your Housing and Get Paid to Live for Free. I thought it was like the most clickbait title. And I was like, this is like some scam infomercial thing or whatever. So I clicked on it and then I started reading the article. And at that time, whenever I thought of like real estate investors, I thought it was like huge apartment buildings. Like we lived in a really big apartment building. I thought that's what real estate investing looks like. And then when I realized that like you could own either like a single family house and rent out the rooms, or you could even own like a duplex, like a 2-family house, live in one unit and rent out the other. That was like pretty revolutionary for us because now real estate wasn't so daunting. And then after reading that article, I discovered the company Bigger Pockets, and their now CEO, Scott, wrote a book called Set for Life. And in that book, that kind of gave us the blueprint we needed, both in terms of how to get started with house hacking, how to prepare ourselves to have success with it. And then once we achieved it, how to use that money for our financial goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I have that book somewhere on my shelf back there, but I'll put a link to it in the description of this video so that if anyone's interested to check it out. I can't agree more with you and the resource that Bigger Pockets has been in my life as well. And as you guys know, I've been investing now since 2011, and I'm a little bit more advanced in my stage of investing, but I started the exact same way. So I started with a house hack. It was not the home run that people talk about. I didn't make a ton of money on it, but it was all about reducing my expenses. I didn't want to pay rent, just like you guys didn't want to continue paying that really high rent. And I wanted to supplement my own income in that way.
I think it's a more accessible strategy than most might think, because a lot of times one of the biggest barriers in terms of like investing in real estate is the money. You know, you could find a great property, but a lot of times I think in order to conceptualize buying a rental property, the standard going rate is like 20 to 25% down. And with where property values are at today, that can seem like a really daunting number. But for both of our properties, our first one, we used a 5% down conventional loan. And our second house hack, we used a 3.5% down, which made it far more attainable.
That's great. So just so that maybe some people might not know, I think most of my audience knows what house hacking is, but maybe you guys could just give a quick definition of exactly what we're talking about that includes house hacking.
Absolutely. So when you're planning to house hack, you buy a property using an owner occupant loan. And by doing that, you only have to put a low percent down. So as Josh had alluded to, like if you're a veteran, 0%, 3.5% down for an FHA, or even 5% down for a conventional. So you're not putting a lot of money out of pocket. And then you're either buying a single family home or a multifamily home. So when you're buying a single family home, you would rent out the rooms to tenants and then collect rent, which would help offset mortgage costs. With a multifamily home, like a 2 to a 4 unit property, you would move into one of the apartments and then you would rent out the other ones. And then that collected rent would again help offset your mortgage. So the beautiful thing about house hacking is you need a place to live, so you buy a place to live, and then you have other people to help support you with paying the mortgage down.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's one of my favorite strategies. It's that strategy as sort of the first beginner strategy that I recommend to everyone I talk to. And then once you get more advanced, you start getting into the BRRRR strategy where you buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. And I know that Josh, you and I had some offline conversations about that, and you guys are kind of moving toward that potentially in the near future, potentially with some private financing, not so much the house hack financing, the owner occupied financing, but maybe some more advanced tactics with that. And I want to ask you about that as well, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about the first house hack that you bought and what that process was like. How long did it take? What were you looking for when you were strategizing, trying to figure out what will be the best house hack for you? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
So when Josh first discovered real estate, bigger pockets, and all things house hacking, he was very, very excited. And when Josh gets excited, it's kind of like a fire hydrant. Like it all just comes out at you at once. So he showed me the Excel sheets. He talked about the numbers. And I was like, what are you talking about, first of all? And this is a horrible, crazy idea I want nothing to do with. And the properties that we looked at were also a little horrible and crazy. They looked wonderful on the Excel sheets. They cash flowed even if we were living in them, but they were not in good areas. They were in really bad shape. So the quality of life piece was not there. So I would say when we started looking, it was a little bumpy, and it took us time through deal analysis and touring properties to find what criteria made sense for us. But especially as a young married couple, location was a really, really big piece in that deal analysis. And we needed a neighborhood where we felt safe. The property was decent quality. So that was something that we strategized with. But we started looking for properties, I would say, in like May of 2018. We looked at properties up until our wedding of August of 2018. We probably put in a dozen offers that all got rejected. One time we found a property and we were like the first people to see the property. And by the end of the day, there were like 30 offers, multiple cash, some tens of thousands over asking. So it was very competitive. But then we got married, and a few months later, we found our duplex. We literally scraped together every dollar that we had and skipped the honeymoon to find a house hack instead.
What's kind of cool about that deal too is, so it was an off-market duplex, and it was specifically a husband and wife who had started house hacking it probably 3 years prior to us buying it. And they'd put a ton of work into it. And their plan was to house hack, fix it up, do another house hack. And along the way, they started growing their family. And very quickly, house hacking wasn't as simple. And so, but they had put so much time and energy into it that they didn't just want to sell the property to any investor. And I think that was kind of what helped us get that property. Is we didn't have the highest offer. We needed some help with closing costs. But I think sometimes sharing your story, especially in a competitive market, can be the thing that gets you and your offer accepted over someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. And you guys had a connection with them. It sounds like they were doing the same thing early on as you guys were trying to do. So I'm sure that went a long way to help bridge that gap and maybe accept your offer.
Yeah, no, I think it made a world of difference. And I mean, prior to that, we had gotten under contract on 2 other properties that didn't work out. And every time it didn't work out, we started to feel a little bit more hopeless. Like maybe this isn't going to work out. The year was progressing along, but we just kind of kept putting one foot in front of the other, analyzing deals, walking deals, driving through neighborhoods and stuff like that. And then it was actually the week of Christmas, I think, that we closed. December of 2018. And then we moved in shortly thereafter.
And so what were the numbers like on that particular duplex, as far as you guys can share, in terms of, how much money you put down and then what your monthly expenses were versus the rent you were making on that property?
Yeah. So what's nice too about house hacking is you can get the same fixed rate 30-year mortgage on a duplex as you can on a single family home. So that's exactly the type of loan we got on this property. The total housing and payment, including taxes and insurance, was $1,384. And it actually had a tenant upstairs. So he was paying $725 a month. But when we started looking online, like Zillow and Facebook Marketplace, we knew that with some paint and some modifications to the apartment, it could probably rent for like $925, maybe even $950 when the person moved out. But we weren't in a rush to have them move out. We were just happy to have a renter. And so January 1st of 2019, we collected our first rent check ever. And I remember we collected it, and it was like the weirdest feeling because it was the first time we had made money not from a job. And we took that money, we put it in our bank account, and then it paid for over half of our mortgage.
Yeah, what was cool was overnight we went from paying $1,400 in housing to about $600, and we were actually living in a nicer housing situation than we were with our luxury rental. So it was a really great deal.
So it was a win-win. And Allie, were you feeling comfortable in that one? I know you said you looked at some others that you weren't so happy with the neighborhood and other features of properties. Was that one pretty much up to the standard that you were looking for at that
Oh,
time?
this one was so beautiful. It had a garage, a driveway, it had a big fence and backyard, 3 bedrooms, wood floors, really updated and modern. It was like your perfect first house hack. It was, yeah, it really fit the bill.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. And I agree with you guys 100% because when I was looking for my first house hack and my first investment property, I was already with my wife. We weren't married yet. We were dating, but it was the same exact conversation. We were looking, I used an agent at the time, even though as an attorney, I probably could have represented myself and done all that, but I was so new to real estate investing that I went with the recommendation. Someone referred an agent to me, and they toured us around all around Capital Region. We looked at all the different duplexes that were on the market. I don't think we looked at anything larger than a duplex. I think I was kind of like, I'm a little scared of going any bigger than that. But yeah, I definitely looked at a lot of duplexes, and my wife was saying the exact same thing. She's like, okay, we're not going into any war zones. You're not going to be buying anything where, yeah, your cash flow, your ROI is like 20%. That's not going to happen. We're not doing that. You got to buy something that in a good school district, or at the very least in a nice neighborhood where low crime and working class families. And that's exactly what we ended up doing too. So I can relate completely to what you guys went through with that.
And I would just comment on that. And I love that story because we get questions all the time about how to make house hacking work. And I think a lot of times, especially if you're in a relationship, step away from the Excel sheet and don't make it so much about the numbers. I know for us, what was really transformative was when we really started talking about our values, right? I came in with all the analytics and the cash on cash and stuff like that. It was when we really started talking about, well, the things that we want to do more of, why can't we do more of those? And a lot of it was because we're working a ton. We had a lot of debt. We weren't saving any money. And I was like, well, by house hacking and lowering our cost of living and paying off all that debt, we're going to have a lot more flexibility and freedom, whether it's to start a family, travel, spend time with existing family, things like that. And once we started having those conversations, I noticed a real quick progress towards our first house hack.
And that's actually a great point too, and something that I want to get into with you guys as well. I know that you work with a lot of newbies and potential house hackers, future house hackers that are interested in this, but are maybe hesitant for various reasons. And I just wanted to ask you guys, like, what are some of the major objections that you're hearing from people, and how should they be overcoming them when it comes to house hacking? Because I know you and I both agree and believe that house hacking as your first strategy to get into real estate is probably hands down the best one for most people.
I think that a huge barrier, especially for couples, is getting on the same page. I think it can be really hard. Usually you have one partner that's really into it, and then another one that's like, I'm not so sure. So it's really important to have those conversations so that you're able to align what makes sense for us in our future. Once I really understood the benefits and how it could add to the value of our lives, I was totally on board, but it took time. But I think another huge misnomer with real estate investing, I would say two, people think you need 20% down to get into real estate investing. So they feel like they're never going to have enough money to be able to invest. But that's what the beauty of house hacking is, because you don't need to put a huge amount of cash down. And then the second one I would say is people think that house hacking is synonymous with living in a really bad area or lowering your quality of life. All the time, people are like, yeah, well, I couldn't house hack, or I have children, I couldn't house hack. And we're planning to house hack with children. And I think that many people can improve their situation through house hacking.
Yeah, the one other thing that I would put on that is I think, and I was guilty as charged, I thought, well, if I'm not living for free, house hacking, it's a failure, right? If my rent isn't perfectly zero, and there's a lot of space between when we were paying $1,400 a month towards zero. And just because you're not paying zero, especially, I mean, we have a lot of people from like California, Seattle, very expensive cost of living markets where they're like, well, it's impossible for me to get to zero. I'm like, well, if you can go from paying, $2,500 a month in rent down to like $1,000, still that's a huge win. And so understanding what winning looks for like for each person in their unique situation.
That makes sense. And so what about, obviously there are some older folks who, or maybe folks that have kids, like you said, what do you guys tell them? I know obviously you guys aren't in that situation yet where you have kids, so you can't speak directly from experience of house hacking with kids, but I know you're planning to. What are there certain strategies that you guys have thought of that maybe people should try or would be useful for trying to house hack with kids?
Well, I think there's a lot of options. And I think with children in particular, people are really worried about privacy and safety. They want to have their own home and they don't want to feel like they're on top of their tenants. I think that there's a lot of creative strategies to reduce your housing costs while still having that sense of privacy. So, our favorite type of multifamily home is the side by side duplex, right? So, when you have a side by side duplex, you don't have tenants above you. You could have a fence that separates the two properties, and you're able to greatly reduce your cost of living. Another beautiful way to house hack would be to find a property that has an accessory dwelling unit or the opportunity to add it. So you could have a single family home and then you could have an apartment above the garage or something like that where it's not even attached to your house. And when people say like I'm nervous about being near my tenants, there are systems in place to find tenants and people that live within your homes that you're comfortable with and you would feel safe having them near your property. We thoroughly vet our tenants before we place any of them into our properties.
And something too, I think sometimes people think like house hacking is maybe just for a younger person. We have friends who, as they were approaching retirement, they realized by getting like a nice side by side duplex and almost eliminating their housing costs, the retirement accounts that they had were now going to last them so much longer because their cost of living was so much lower. And so house hacking, I think personally, can really work at any stage of life, really, depending on what your person's goals are.
And I also say to people, depends on your specific situation, right? Because for someone, maybe like you're saying, someone younger, like someone like Scott Trench, right, from Bigger Pockets, who started when he was single and didn't have any other responsibilities that, family, you could possibly rent rooms in a single family house and you'd be fine. And I had many friends that have done that, and maybe they did it shortly after college, and it was the same roommates that they had in college locally here, and they just continued that path. Whereas other people, just like you guys are saying, are older, they already have kids, and maybe they are in the really expensive, overpriced home that they're paying way too much for mortgage expenses, taxes, and everything else, where it might make sense for them to downsize to something smaller, like a side-by-side duplex, where a lot of that housing expense is going to be paid for by their tenants. So I think it definitely depends on the specific situation that the person finds themselves in, and it also could change as they progress forward in life.
Yeah, and one thing I would share is we just recently had the chance to do an interview with Brandon Turner, who's done a lot in real estate. And so Brandon Turner, his company just recently closed on like $75 million of real estate. And during our interview, he was giving us a tour of his house hack in Maui, Hawaii. So this is a person who's married, he's got kids, and he's still figuring out how to make house hacking work for his lifestyle and his family's lifestyle. So I think it can be done. Sometimes you just have to get more creative with it.
He's living in a $2.5 million triplex. So when people associate house hacking again with the downgrading quality of life, it absolutely does not have to be that way at all.
Yeah. Awesome. So you guys were house hacking that first house hack, the first duplex. I know that you also had you mentioned you had some student debt. How did you kind of work that in? And as well as you mentioned that at the time when you first started looking into it, you had lost your job, Josh. So what did you do? How did you get back on your feet as far as your work and stream of income from W-2 or 1099 work, and then also integrate that with a house hack and also pay off your student debt?
Yeah, no, it was a busy couple of years there. So I got laid off and we had a wedding to plan for. So the first thing I did was, well, how can I make money? And so I started driving for Uber. And what was really nice about that was I had a lot of time in a car. And so when I wasn't transporting people, I had usually like the Bigger Pockets podcast going or some other personal finance podcast going. So I did that for a while. And then I took a job that was a pretty significant pay cut, but it was in the same field. And I always kind of had that entrepreneurial itch, but partially because of our debt, I was always afraid to take that chance because we couldn't afford to go without that income. So I took a job and I lasted in that job, I think about a month. And Allie and I had the conversation. She was like, I know you're not happy. And I know this is something you've always wanted to do. So I think if there was ever a time for you to take a shot on you and start your own business, the time is now. I'll give you a couple months. Hopefully it works out. If not, maybe, go find a job at the state or something. And so in June of 2018, I started a consulting business focused on career counseling for workers with disabilities. And I've never looked back after that.
Amazing. That's great. So what have you been, so you've been finding clients basically from your own hustle and online presence, or how did you find folks that you would be helping and working with?
Yeah, no. So I've now been in my industry for about 10 years. And so
Yep.
I made quite the reputation for myself. And so over the years, some folks had kind of been, hey, if you ever, go out on your own, or if you ever start your own business, let us know. We really like working with you. And I was always really humbled by it, but I'd never seen myself as doing that. I was like, oh, I'm going to work at this company for 30 years and build it up and stuff like that. And so when the time did come, I did let some folks know, and that kind of gave me my proof of concept. I had someone, I knew how to provide the service. I provided the service. I collected my first self-employment income, and that was, again, like that, collecting that first rent check.
Yeah.
That was one of the best income I ever made.
Yeah.
And then I just scaled it from there.
So I think with house hacking, it gave us the confidence to take greater risks in our careers and personal lives. So Josh was able to scale his income. I applied to another school social work job where I increased my income as well. And we really thought about more creative ways to pay off our debt. So a year and a half after we bought our first house hack, we found our second house hack that was 6 houses down from that. And that house hack allowed us to reach our live for free goal,
Awesome.
which really, really expedited our ability to pay off our debt.
That's great. And so how much debt did you guys have at the time?
We had over $100,000 in student loans. I would say, but that didn't count like cars or credit cards. I would say by the time we got into the second house hack, what would you say? We'd paid off maybe 30,000.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, so we had gotten rid of the car loan. We sold Allie's car and got a Corolla, and we paid off our credit cards. And so we probably at that point we'd paid off probably about $30,000 between car loans and student loans. So we were still probably in that like $60,000 to $70,000 range.
Gotcha. And if you don't mind sharing, what was the interest rate on your student loans as compared to your other debt?
Yeah.
Was it a large difference, or is it similar, close?
It was not massive. I mean, for the student loans, we had them consolidated federally at 5%. So it wasn't a egregious interest rate, but I think the emotional burden of having that debt, even though it was like, oh, we could probably slow play our loans. It's not like it's a 12% interest or something crazy. But for us, it was just like, we want to get rid of them. So when we got into the second house hack, that's really when we started aggressively paying off the debt.
And what's nice too is at that point, my income was back to kind of where it was prior to being let go. Allie's income had gone up a little bit. We both had additional side hustles, so we were working a ton. But so that snowball, if you will, the gap between our income and our expenses was really starting to grow. And because our cost of living was so low, all of that money now could just continuously get thrown at student loans. And that was kind of the process that we used.
Yeah. I can share a similar experience myself. So as you guys know, I'm an attorney. So I had undergraduate loans, which weren't that dramatic. I think maybe I had 20, 30,000 from undergrad, which is not bad at all compared to some folks. And then I went to law school, and that was, I had a little bit of a scholarship, but primarily it was all student loans. And with those types of loans, because they're, I guess, depending on the timing, I guess, when I went to law school, which was 2007 through 2010, at that time when we were borrowing, it was like 6.8 interest rate and 8.5 interest rate on the federal loans that we were getting. And so I had a ton of those loans. I think I left law school, I think I had like 115,000 just from law school alone. And despite what people think, a lot of people think, oh, well, you're an attorney, I'm sure you were making bank as soon as you left law school. Well, that wasn't the case at all. And I did really well in law school. I was at the top of our class here in Albany, in the Capital Region. Albany Law School is the local law school here. And because of the crash of 2008, 9, and because of the pullback in the market, in the legal market, as well as the broader market, there really weren't many jobs. And so normally the way it would work is you would go as an attorney or as a law student, you would take an internship in your second summer, after your second year. And then that firm or that employer would give you an offer for when you're done with your third year, when you're graduating. Well, in my case, and as well as in many other law students' cases, those offers were not given, or they were rescinded because of the crash and because of the concerns that a lot of employers had with providing or taking on more employees when their business was suffering. And so I didn't have an offer up through probably middle of my third year. I was scrambling. I was trying to find anything. And so I ended up taking a government job. I took a state attorney job with one of actually the high court in the state, but it wasn't even six figures. Like, it wasn't even close to six figures. You know what I'm saying? So when you're leaving law school and you're starting out, I think I started out at like $76,000 a year as my starting salary in 2010. And I have $130,000 in student loans at 6.8% and 8.5%. That could be pretty scary. And at the same time, I'm trying to decide, my girlfriend at the time, trying to decide, do we want to rent? Do we want to buy a regular house? We can probably afford it, but hey, maybe we want a house hack. And that was our whole calculus as well, just the same as you guys. And then I tried to get creative with paying off my student loans. And I was able to do that over the next, I think, 6, 7, 8 years with different avenues, including involving real estate, as well as certain refinances of real estate that I invested in. So I definitely feel you and hear you on that. And it's an awesome accomplishment. And I definitely congratulate you guys on doing that.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, I agree with you. And I think that student debt in this country is outrageous. We were just looking at like a projector for like when we do have kids, what it will look like 20 years out from now. That is a scary number just for like a 4-year degree at state school. So I think that's why for us, we made it such a high priority item to pay it off. So that first year and a half of house hacking, we maybe got 30 grand paid down. But after that, that's really when it snowballed. And we actually just paid off our student loans last month in January. And I'd say in just under 3 years. So it's been a grind, but I'm really grateful to be on the other side of it for sure.
Absolutely. Did you guys go out and celebrate?
Yeah.
You got to celebrate, right?
We didn't practice what we preach.
Well, it's so funny. And I think we did maybe we like went out to dinner or something like that. But in the beginning, even now, just saying like we paid off our student loans, it's like when you're in it day to day, it's like you're so focused on the thing, right? That when you do it along the way, we started seeing the student loans go away. And we were like, well, if we can do this, what else can we do? And admittedly, I think we started to look a little bit beyond just paying off our student loans. And so it was, when we did it, we clicked the button and it felt good, but it wasn't like what you think maybe you see on TV or whatever. We're like, there was no balloons or anything. It was like, okay, click. That's really exciting, but we have some really big goals that we're still working towards.
But I'm pretty sure that like we paid off our student loans and 2 hours later, Josh came to me like in a tizzy and he's like, Allie, we need to buy more rentals. And it's like, okay, calm down. But it kind of is this feeling of we spent the past 3 years digging ourselves out of this hole. And now it's like, well, now it's time to build the mountain. Now it's time to build systems and create systems to create that, income that we're looking for. So now the fun part starts, but there's a lot of work yet to do.
100%. So I want to continue with that story then. So what's next for you guys in terms of real estate? I know I still want to talk to you about the personal brand and everything you guys are building with that. But what's the next step? If you're going to take a next step, what is it for real estate investing?
Yeah. So something that I think maybe you had kind of alluded to earlier was partnerships and using private money and things of that nature. So over the last 3 years or so, we have made some really cool relationships and connections here in the Capital District with fellow investors like yourself and others who have been really helpful to just kind of show us how they went from buying duplexes and single family homes to much bigger apartments. So now kind of that next phase for us is I think we're probably going to still stay in that 2 to 4 unit space for now, but we are looking to kind of ramp up our portfolio. We don't have aspirations right now of hundreds of units or anything like that. But if we got to say 15, 16 unit portfolio for us, I mean, that would be like a huge win. And that would more or less kind of get us to that fully financial independent stage.
So it's exciting. We're looking at properties that we're not necessarily going to live in. We're not using just our money to buy. I mean, up until this point, every single cent that went into a property was just our money. And that can only go so far. So this is a little scary, but also exciting chapter in terms of leveraging other people's money and finding investment properties that we're not going to occupy ourselves.
Yeah. And I think you guys are doing it exactly right, because you started out with your own money. You started out with the house hacking method. You've proven now to other people who are watching you, and people in your circle are all kind of observing and seeing, are they serious? Are they for real? Right. And that's the best way to do it, to get to that next stage, because now you have a track record. You have 2 buildings that you purchased that you've managed well, cash flowing, you're doing well with them. And you can show people that I've been through this process already. I know how this works. I know how to do leasing. I know how to screen my tenants. I'm not going to go bankrupt. I'm not going to make foolish decisions with my money. You guys are a much safer risk for potential private lender or money partner or whatever their role might be. And so I think that is the best way to start the foundation to get to that next step.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. And we talk about it a lot of building that digital resume. And the person that we're partnering with right now was very candid that over the last year or two, we made a relationship with them and they've seen everything that we've been doing and the knowledge we've been sharing. And that kind of made them that much more confident. Plus, just having conversations with us, understanding our mindset and goals. So they were more than happy to work with us on our next investment.
That's awesome. So what do you guys see? Like, where do you see it going? So you're thinking maybe 15 units in the near term, next 4 or 5 years, or even shorter than that?
Well, if you ask one of us, we probably have different answers. But I feel like if we could get to 15 units, we're at 4 units right now. If we could get to 15 units within 5 years, I feel good about that. What would you say? You probably say like in the next 2 years.
Max. Yeah. I mean, I would love to finish the year close to like 8 to 10. And then we would also like to not always live in a duplex. So aspirationally, we'd also like to find a nice starter single family home. Family planning is very much a big focus for us right now. Not that you can't start a family living in a duplex, but we would just like a little bit more privacy. But yeah, if in the next 12 to 24 months, I think it's entirely reasonable that we hit that 15 unit goal.
I think this is what's good about a partnership, right? We both have different perspectives and eventually we'll find a compromise that works. If it was up to me, we probably never would have bought a property.
Yeah.
And if it was up to Josh, we would have bought a bunch of really bad properties.
Right.
We didn't have business buying.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And it's great. And I think exactly having a partnership where one person is the yin and the other person is the yang, and you guys can complement each other. And if one is pulling too hard forward, the other one can kind of pull them back and vice versa. And I think that's exactly, the way to do it. It's the best way to do it. So
yeah, that's it.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the personal branding, the Phi couple. What have you guys been doing with that? What are your goals with that? And just tell the audience about, and I'll put some links in the description as well, what you're planning, what that's all about. And I saw on your website, just kind of took a quick glance, and I don't want to jump ahead or anything like that. I saw you guys have some coaching or consulting that you're offering, as well as other things. So why don't you guys tell us about that?
Yeah, so we were about to close on our second house hack in September of 2020. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. And I had a dream that we launched like a personal finance brand. And we like started documenting our story on social media. And this is funny that I thought that because neither of us are really social media people. If you are connected with us on our personal pages, we like very rarely post. So a little interesting that I would even have thought of it, but I woke Josh up in the middle of the night. I said, Josh, we need to make a social media page. I'm so excited. This is such a great idea. And what did you say?
I thought it was a terrible idea.
He thought it was the worst idea. Allie, that's stupid. We're not going to do that. Like, who would want to follow us? We literally own one duplex. Like, this is ridiculous. But I'm a little persistent. And we ended up launching the Phi couple. And at first it was like, you know what? We'll start documenting our journey. Maybe our moms will follow us. We'll see what happens. But we really wanted to have conversations and to normalize the dialogue that you don't have to come from a lot of money. You don't need to be set up financially. You don't need to be a contractor in order to invest in real estate. And you don't need to be a super high income earner to achieve financial independence. So we wanted to kind of normalize those money conversations and help improve financial literacy. So that's kind of how the Phi couple evolved.
It was almost kind of like a pay it forward activity, if you will, because we, for so long, whether it was Bigger Pockets or other forums, we had learned from so many other communities that this was kind of going to be our way, if you will, of kind of giving forward or helping out in some way, shape, or form. And that's kind of how it started. We started right near the end of 2020. Neither one of us have a background in social media. We're both human service professionals by trade. And then I don't know when exactly it really started taking off. I would say maybe March or April. Selfishly, some of it was so that way we could maybe connect with people we'd always looked up to or admired. Sure. But then sometime maybe like April, I think it was, of 2021, I think maybe had maybe 4,000 or 5,000 followers. And we were like, maybe there's something to this. We were kind of learning the mechanics of social media because there's a lot of ways to grow a social media page and there's a lot of analytics. So we started figuring that out, and steadily the page and our audience really started to grow. And then we thought the same way real estate maybe could help lower our cost of living, we started to think, well, maybe this could be a business.
Yeah, and it's really incredible too, because in a little over a year, we've scaled our page to over 90,000 followers on
Amazing.
Instagram. And it generated enough revenue that I was able to leave my full-time job.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like, it's really amazing that we did build this fully functioning business. But looking back, it's funny. We never expected it to become what it is, but it's been really awesome.
So that's great. And so is Instagram your main platform that you're on, that you post content to?
Yeah, so Instagram is our main platform. We've done YouTube videos for Bigger Pockets. We're contributing writers for CNBC and other news sources. So we
Yeah.
try to add value where we can to different resources. But I would say Instagram is our biggest platform for sure.
And it started off with maybe we could help individuals or couples who have similar goals. And so we started off with one-on-one coaching. And then I think as our platform grew, companies who felt like we would be in good alignment with them asked if maybe they could sponsor us to share their product or service. And 99% of requests that we get were like, thank you, but no thank you. But there have been some that are wonderful, and we've partnered with them. So that's helped a ton. And then we have a private community now with, I think, almost like 200 members. Us and our partners, we just teach all things personal finance, real estate, stock market, budgeting, paying off debt. That's been really inspiring. So that's been another great income source for us in terms of our business.
Yep.
And just one thing after another. But again, to kind of go back to like, because house hacking made our cost of living so low, it's kind of given us the confidence to not only pay off all that debt, but take chances on more entrepreneurial endeavors that we weren't sure, like, will they work out? But we also didn't need a lot of income from them in the beginning to kind of take a chance on them.
That's the power of this. Like, if we had not done everything we were doing with debt payoff and real estate, I never would have been able to leave my job this fall. And I was a school social worker at a local elementary school, and schools were really tough during COVID. And I was very burnt out. It was not going well. And I knew I needed to make a pivot. But because of our cost of living being so low, like less than $2,000 a month, we're spending on all of our needs.
Right.
We were able to make that pivot. So that's really cool.
Absolutely. So let's imagine a couple that's at the very beginning of their journey, and they are both working and they have all the same concerns and fears, and maybe they have some student debt. Would your advice to them be, try to find a way to reduce your housing expenses? Would that be the number one first step?
I think that a lot of times when people are just starting out their lives, they do what society tells us to do. And that is, you got the college education, you got your first job, go get the new car, you deserve it. Go buy the single family house, have the big wedding. Like, there's all of these expectations within society that I think are like markers of success. But those markers of success, if your finances aren't solid, will keep you locked into a toxic job or will set you back from doing the things you really want to do. So I think for someone just getting started, you have time for the nice car. You have time for the big house, but get your financial situation in order so that you can do it in a responsible way that doesn't have lasting ripple effects for decades. So I would say, drive the used car as long as you can, reduce the housing payment, and consider house hacking, because eventually, once you do those things, you'll eventually get to where you want to be. We call it like eating your cereal before your marshmallows. Like, just,
And we also, we work with couples now all over the country who they come to us with questions. And sometimes before we kind of go down of like real estate investing and stuff like that, we always kind of circle back to, what are the goals? What are the things that you'd love to be doing more of? Because sometimes finding that why, if you will, that's really what's going to propel you to do sometimes the harder things, like selling a luxury car with heated seats and moving into a 130-year-old duplex. It's like when you have that big enough why. So that's typically where we would start. And then also like self-education, like podcasts, books, YouTube channels, all these things have been absolutely imperative in terms of us being able to get the knowledge and then taking that knowledge and taking action with it.
For sure. Yeah. And there are a lot of just free resources out there. If somebody wants to put in the time and the effort to educate themselves about personal finance and real estate, there are so many avenues and venues where that's available online. So I definitely agree with you guys on that. 100%.
Absolutely. I think that, the piece with community building is so huge. When we first started, that was another reason why we started our brand, because when we first started, we were like, we were our only community. We listened to people on podcasts, we read the books, but we didn't have that connection of people in our circle that were doing it. And that was really lonely. I think it was hard to get over the mental fear and hurdle of taking those risks. So I think if you build either an in-person community or a virtual community of real people that you can talk to, it really can just expedite your growth.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited for you guys, and I'm excited to continue following your journey. And I definitely appreciate you guys coming on my channel and talking about personal finance and house hacking and everything else. If people wanted to find you, where should I send them? What's the best way for people to connect with you guys?
Connect with us on Instagram, the FI Couple, or you can check us out on our website too, theficouple.com.
And if people have specific questions, we're very active with our email. So it's info@theficouple.com. And we're pretty good most of the time getting back to email same day, or at least in the same week.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'll link everything in the description below if you guys want to check them out, go to their pages. And I really appreciate you guys coming on, and thanks so much. And maybe we can do some business in the near future locally, but I'll definitely keep watching and following your story.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, Vitali. I mean, you've been a wonderful, even if through a phone, you've been a great mentor ever since we started talking.
I appreciate that, Josh. All right. Take care, guys.